My role today is to set out how local government can play a crucial role in helping the decarbonisation of transport across Britain. As local councils, we're custodians of place, overseeing our local areas on behalf of our local communities. Making the transition to net zero transport is something that can make a massive difference to the lives of our residents, in part by the virtue of simultaneous improvements that can help deliver in air quality, as well as wider social benefits of things like active travel. But it will mean significant changes in the way our local spaces and local ecosystems are shaped and managed. If collectively we don't take action, however, to meet net zero, local councils will be on the front line of having to deal with the after effects, trying to adapt to survive the impacts of severe climate change. So local government stands ready to be a partner in what I think is a shared mission towards net zero, but it will need some significant assistance to do so. I just want to briefly focus minds in the room about what local government is and does at the moment here in England and Wales. Local councils work at the front line of people's daily lives, providing over 800 services, ranging from adult social care, children's services, consumer protection, housing, planning, waste, leisure, culture, through to traffic management and public transport. Local councils come in different shapes, sizes and formats, but it's the part of government that is closest to the people and places it serves, responding to the needs of all communities, whether rural or urban, and to people from all backgrounds. And as many of you may know, the sector has gone through some difficult times over the last 14 years and faces significant challenges ahead that will need to be met to ensure that councils have both the capacity and headspace to deliver on our shared net zero commitments. First of all, our sector needs sufficient and sustainable funding. Inflation, wage pressures, growing demand and complexity of need means that councils are currently facing a funding gap of about 6.2 billion over the next 2 years. If councils' net spend had grown in line with inflation, wage growth, demographics and demand since 2010, it would have been a full 42% higher in 22-23 than was actually available to spend in that year. Councils have had to absorb these huge pressures through service cuts and efficiencies. And as costs have had to be cut, pressures have still risen, particularly in areas around adult social care, home-to-school transport, adult social care, and tackling homelessness, all the while meeting the greater ambition of our residents for action on important things like net zero and active travel. We need to urgently stabilise these costs, otherwise there will be little money left to spend on anything else, particularly taking ambitious steps towards a net zero future. Councils are at the forefront of building the homes that we need. The housing crisis is worsening due to limited availability, affordability and suitability of homes, and the average house price in England is 8.3 times higher than average annual earnings. Private rents are skyrocketing, which is helping fuel the homelessness we're seeing, and that's impacting temporary accommodation costs and ever-growing council housing waiting lists. So, the incoming government has set an ambitious plan to deliver 1.5 million new homes. New homes, particularly in new developments, and the next generation new towns will need transport infrastructure at the heart of them. And we need to be thinking now about how we can ensure that transport infrastructure is focused on net zero transport options to be at the heart of new communities that are focused around public transport connectivity and active travel connectivity. We're focusing on prevention. Properly funded local councils can do innovative things, and we can make sure those innovative things are low carbon things. If we're able to plan for the long term rather than merely reacting to events or chasing around individual small pots of funding, ultimately, for example, on road services, there are things we can do if we are able to plan for the future rather than just jumping to respond to one-off pots to fill potholes. For example, in my own borough, a road in my ward, we were able to deliver a new road surface which was made of 92% recycled materials, the highest percentage ever used in a UK road. That's because we're a better resource council than some, and we're able to plan that work into what we're doing, and we're able to get our heads up and think how we can look at all phases of what we're doing to meet our climate goals. Back in local climate action, we know there is really pent-up appetite in our local communities to see progress on climate action, from community energy to active travel. And local government's offer to support this mission is enormous. We have the influence to drive down a third of every place's carbon emissions, and many local councils have ambitious targets to do so, with my own borough being committed to being a net zero council by 2030 and helping us deliver a net zero city by 2040. As community and place leaders, we can do this across housing, planning, transport, environment, through our work with local health authorities as procurers, asset holders, land managers, conveners, enablers. We're able to put reducing emissions and building resilience at the heart of what we're doing. The challenge for different councils will be different. For example, we've heard very clearly, obviously, transport is the top decarbonisation need in the country. But, for example, 71% of Westminster's greenhouse gas emissions are from non-residential buildings. But we know local councils need to be a part in delivering the action that's needed. And transport can be both an enabler and barrier to delivering inclusive growth. We're supporting the government's mission to kickstart economic growth across the country, and there are intentions to both deepen and widen devolution across the country. Transport can be an enabler and barrier to that growth. And better public transport and active travel networks can boost growth through providing effective routes into work, for further training and education, and to revitalising our local high streets. New technology and trends offer further opportunities to support growth whilst driving down emissions. Particularly in cities like London, where personal car use falls year on year, the number of vehicles on our roads is being maintained by the number of delivery and servicing vehicles, which is why we need to clearly rethink commercial transport and logistics from start to finish, whether that's looking with fresh eyes at some of the key methods of freight transportations of the past, from river and waterways transport through to rail. We have to find new, and we also have to find new ways of connecting up those freight services into consolidated hubs. Freight consolidation is absolutely essential. That can then unlock last mile deliveries to be moving away from the van and onto the cargo bike and e-cargo bike. Similarly, for major cities, waste consolidation is important to reduce the number of vehicles moving around our streets. And local councils can have further support to help decarbonise our own fleets. For example, my own borough has already moved half of our bin lorries to be fully electric and almost all of our individual cleansing fleet, and we're making the transition on the rest within the next few years. So, having set the context for local government's priorities over the next few years, what are some of the things that councils are already doing to achieve our ambition to net zero transport? There's already a lot. For example, we're absolutely key in helping roll out more public EV charging points across the country. There are now almost 65,000 EV charging points, an increase of over 60% since April 2023. 2,500 of them already on the streets of my borough here on our lampposts and curbsides. There's importance of investing in public transport, with over 3.4 billion bus passenger journeys happening, an annual increase of 19%. There's more investment in going into other forms of transit, such as the trams in West Yorkshire and the cost-effective very light railway system in Coventry. And there's some real excitement out there about the government's Better Buses Bill, which will give councils and local transport authorities a greater say in how local services operate, with scope to push for further electrification and to improve timetabling and our networks to encourage greater usage and take-up. Many local authorities have taken difficult decisions already and shown leadership by introducing clean air zones and demand management schemes, such as congestion charging and Nottingham's workplace parking levy. And across the country, local authorities are investing in active travel schemes, despite some of the attempts at culture wars around some of those initiatives that happened under the previous government. We want central government to not be nitpicking on those sort of things. We want to move to a role of partnership to help delivering net zero transport in our local communities. That means properly devolving resources and providing the funding that's needed so that councils can develop transformational local transport plans and deliver low emission solutions in the way that we travel. There is too much fragmentation of funding streams, and it's often too short term to allow us to get our head up, think and plan and be innovative. And too much money is wasted on bureaucracy satisfying the different rules of each fund rather than helping us deliver those long-term needs. For example, at the moment, there's 5 different funding pots supporting buses alone. So the long-term city-region sustainable transport settlements for mayoral combined authority areas are a good start, but we need to see this expanded across all areas as we begin to think of the country as a whole and get greater sort of regional coverage of strategic transport authorities and other coordination. Want to devolve powers so that councils can make the right decisions and influence behaviours. We've already talked about the importance of the Secretary of State's removing of the Secretary of State approval for bus franchising if you're not in mayoral combined authority area, and the need to do more things around allowing local determination on issues from workplace parking levies to issues around moving transport offences. You shouldn't have to go to the Secretary of State every time you want to make an individual decision in your local area. And crucially, for London, as you may or may not have noticed around here, there's an urgent need to better regulate new and emerging net zero transport modes, such as e-scooters and bike hires. You've probably seen the explosion of doctors' bikes across London. They're great fun and they're bringing lots of new people to cycling, but they are proving a nightmare for any city and local authority to manage, with bikes being dumped all over the shop, blocking pavements and roads. At present, this is an entirely unregulated sector with no powers for either councils or strategic transport authorities like TfL to help manage the system in the public interest and to support sustainable growth of active travel. So we need action on that. We want to see, as I said, we need a national framework that puts local authorities front and centre in the ability to help drive that transition. So we stand ready to be your partner in this work, and we want to have the support from central government to do it. But looking forward to working with you over the months and years ahead as we meet our shared objectives. Thank you very much.
We're a bit tight for time, but we've got time for a couple of questions. I think that just illustrates through all those examples why local authorities are such an important partner in this whole enterprise. Do we have any questions from the audience for Adam? One here. It's not compulsory, it's only it's voluntary.
No, I'll do it. Will Reeves, SMMT. You've invested in zero-emission refuse trucks, which is great. All local councils have declared a climate emergency like you have. What do other councils need to do to order zero-emission trucks like you have? You've led the way. How can we get every other local council to place orders for these trucks?
Comparatively, we are a well-resourced local authority with a strong balance sheet that enables us to plan ahead and make the capital investment required. I love our zero-emission fleet. It's amazing. It's quite expensive, so we have to find ways to assist local councils with the capital funding to make that upfront investment that will ultimately save lives and save money and carbon over the long term. So absolutely, that's getting local government finances back on a firm footing, making sure that the local infrastructure is in place. Obviously, one of the key challenges we've had to enable that fleet to happen was actually making sure we had places that we could actually go and charge the things, and that involved quite substantial land deals to do it. So we had the resource and focus to enable it to happen. Key thing is making sure that all local authorities are supported and funded, and obviously the more people, the more investment there is in the sector, the cheaper the unit price of each truck is going to be, and therefore it will be easier for other authorities to make that transition. But it's working well for us at the moment, and we're going to be delivering the rest of that transition over the next couple of years. But we are comparatively lucky in terms of our finances. I'm not going to say that we have our challenges, but we know compared to the rest of the sector we have some opportunities.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. Have we got another question? Final question? Oh, right, okay. Yeah, just coming.
Hi there, Jonathan Leake. I'm the energy editor at the Telegraph, but this is a private question. So speaking as someone who nearly got mown down by an electric skateboard on the way here, and also as someone who's rides a bike as well and quite enjoys it. What kind of regulation or rules would you like to see around the increasing diversity and number of motorised bikes and scooters in this area, really?
So at the moment, e-scooters are only legal if they're part of a TfL trial here in London. What we are seeing is, I've seen adverts on the side of buildings advertising the sale of e-scooters to the general public. Now, in central London, there are very few people with large areas of private land that they can go and ride their e-scooters around legally, which is the only thing that you can do at the moment. So we have a fundamental problem there. And in terms of e-bikes, at the moment, there is literally no regulation at all that applies to them. There are some very limited abilities in a 40-year-old Highways Act about extreme risk to public safety that can get them removed. And there's obviously, particularly in London, there's not many places for them to be picked up and put. So ultimately, we are pushing very, very hard for TfL, so Strategic Transport Authorities, to have the ability to regulate all forms of electric micromobility. It needs, I think there is an opportunity within the English Devolution Bill in the absence of a specific transport bill. That's the case that we're making to government very clearly. It's essential that there is some order and regulation put in. We want to encourage responsible use of these new modes of transport, but basically at the moment you've got a system on the scooter side where you've either got the TfL regulated system or a free-for-all in terms of illegal private use, and on e-bikes you've got a system where there is actually no legislation that applies to them at all, and it means that every individual local council is having to go to companies like Lime and try and cajole and persuade them to operate responsibly. And you can make some progress with that. Obviously, we've done a lot of work. We've created 330 e-bike bays around central Westminster, but that's really challenging, and that's not enough. So we need the powers to be given to TfL to regulate, and then for TfL to be able to work with us to be able to manage the system more effectively. So it's a core ask that power is devolved to local authorities. So the next time someone comes up with a new form of transport like this, you're not going to having to go back to primary legislation all the time in order to be able to respond to it, because there are going to be new innovations. So I think that's the key thing for this.